All right, guys, thank you very much. I appreciate folks sticking around. And there's a lot of great panels after this one as well. I'm Adelaide Steedley. I'm the Senior Director for Strategy and Policy and Innovation at the Housing Authority of the City of Atlanta, otherwise called Atlanta Housing. So we're going to talk today. We're thrilled to be here. We've learned a lot. We've met some great folks doing some remarkable stuff. So I'm very, very excited to be here and to present with you guys, talk a little bit about what we've been doing. So we're going to talk today about our AH Green Sustainability Initiative. I'm going to start by doing a little bit of background on Atlanta Housing. We're not your typical housing authority. We developed the first federally funded public housing in the country. It was built here in Atlanta, over at Techwood, about a mile from here, in University Homes, which is in the middle of the AU campus. We are the 10th largest in the country, so we have about 25,000 vouchers that we manage through the year. And those families are in project-based and tenant-based arrangements, and we have a very small portfolio of properties that we own. So you might know that more and more housing authorities are working with a mixed income and a mixed use format of development rather than sort of owning properties in full, which will actually become an important part of what we're trying to do. It's an important aspect of how we're trying to do our sustainability efforts in the Housing Authority. So our approach has to be more holistic and more partner-driven. Our initiative began in about 2019. A small group of us started surveying activities that we had done, started reaching out to other housing authorities and doing some research and learning what kinds of things were out there and what kind of new opportunities were coming along. Our group started out with real estate, the real estate department, finance department, and strategy, and it's grown now to include resident services, landlord services, and, for example, marketing and communications, who helped us pull this PowerPoint together. And one of the things that we've learned by working across the company, for example, is that marketing and communications let us know that across all of our social platforms, anytime they post anything about green or sustainability or climate change, that's some of the highest hits that they get out of all the information that we provide to our partners. So these two photographs, the one on the right is Scholars Landing, and the one on the left is Roosevelt Hall, and that is the community center for the old University Homes. It's the last building that we left standing, and it's also a part of our initiative, and I'll talk about that in a minute. So we looked at the challenges in Atlanta with regards to climate change and addressing our concerns. Atlanta has the third highest low-income energy burden in the United States. That's due primarily to the fact that we have a lot of old single-family housing, which are the hardest to heat and keep cool. We have sort of two systems. We have year-round heating and cooling costs. One of the things that we also learned that the most common use of payday lending is utility bills and utility payments. So our families are taking on debt just to be able to keep themselves comfortable. And I think people are hearing more and more stories about families not doing that and suffering the health consequences as a result, which is the next challenge is these adverse environments disproportionately impact low-income communities. And so a lot of low-income families suffer the health consequences. They don't necessarily have access to health care the rest of the communities might have. And so they suffer sick days, and so they lose school days, and they lose work days. So, which intends to compound the problem. So Atlanta's growth, our particular growth, I think several of us have recognized the fact that Atlanta has the fourth highest growth rate in the country. But in particular, in the context of a green climate initiative, that air quality is impacted by these long commutes. We've lost tree cover, tree canopy. Our sprawl is contributing to the challenges. We also learned that housing and construction, which is driving a lot of the development in Atlanta, contributes to about 40% of greenhouse gases. And so we've started to realize that if we can start to address this, then we can actually make some real headway on the issues a lot. And then lastly, one of the things that we found was a fascinating Georgia Tech study published about 5 or 6 years ago that estimated that there's about 240 to 350,000 estimated climate migrants moving to Atlanta over the next 30 years. I think the best example of that is the Katrina evacuees that came to Atlanta and ended up staying. So it's a benefit because we get all that capacity, we get all that we get the folks coming up from New Orleans and trying to make a living here. The Atlanta has the longest day drive coastline in the country, so from New Orleans to North Carolina. And all those folks are starting to move inland, and a lot of folks are moving to Atlanta. And they also pointed out that it explains some of the counter-cyclical population growth that we're having, is that a lot of times you get a lot of jobs, a lot of people move here, and then it kind of tapers off, but we're not finding that in Atlanta. Our growth is just pretty consistent. I was explaining this once to, I was in a staff meeting, I was like, wow, and then a guy whose office sits next to me, he said, I'm a climate migrant. The third time my house was wiped out by a hurricane, we moved to Atlanta. And so we were very, it's around us all day. So what does that mean about the opportunities? So these are some of the unique challenges specific to Atlanta. We wanted to understand what the climate challenge looked like in Atlanta. So the opportunities? Okay. One of the things that we learned and we realized that green initiatives in particular benefit low-income families. Better health outcomes, lower utility burdens, and training and workforce development opportunities. It's a growth industry, as we know. And therein lies the opportunity to encourage folks to get job training. There's a plethora of job training and workforce training in this space right now. Atlanta is a national leader in addressing climate change, so you'll hear a couple of those presentations later this afternoon. So not to steal that thunder, but the City of Atlanta has Clean Energy Plan. They've all sorts of building ordinances, which I hope you'll learn more about, and recycling ordinances. And that creates a great impetus for multifamily property owners to prioritize this work. As we were starting to draft this, Mayor Bottoms at the time actually was presenting to Congress about some of the things that the City of Atlanta was putting together. So that really provides a lot of the momentum. So when we're talking to our partners, whether or not they're aware of these particular things, they're going to be impacted by them. Addressing climate impacts also reduces operating costs. We're stewards of public resources with which to help low-income families, and this allows us to do more for our families when we can lower our operating expenses. And then our business models can drive change for replicable solutions. So through our partnerships with HUD, through our partnerships with other housing authorities, around the country, and our development community partners here in Atlanta, any progress we make for our residents is progress that can be replicated elsewhere. We learned a lot from some of the housing authorities that we talked to, and we're hoping that through the work that we're doing with our partners here in Atlanta, they might be able to learn from some of the work that we're doing. So one of the first things we did, we pulled together a vision and a mission. Basically, the vision is that our communities are inclusive and resilient, and to acknowledge our role as a model for how this can be done in the multifamily community. The addressing climate challenges in multifamily context has been particularly complicated, and we're hoping that we will drive some of the innovation that needs to happen. And then our mission includes all the things that we plan to do in this space, which primarily include which is all about reducing our footprint, building more green housing, and expanding economic opportunity. So it's not just the construction, it's operations, and then it's engaging with our residents. And then we developed some principles, some guiding principles. So one was rather than enforcing mandates that say you have to build it this way, you have to participate this way, we've gone the incentive route. So we've created a bunch of incentives, which we're going to talk about later today, hoping that the incentives will drive innovation into these spaces, and then over time, we won't have to use the incentives anymore. It'll be the way that people do business. We're going to lean into our collaborative nature, rely on partnerships. So traditional partnerships that we've had with organizations, and we're also keen, and we've developed some really exciting new partnerships with organizations that may not necessarily consider themselves partnering with housing authorities. And it's been sort of a mutual learning experience. And these partners can also include our landlords who may rent out a few units to us from time to time. We've learned a lot from those guys as well, and gals. And then data-driven best practices. I think if you get into this space, you'll learn that collecting data allows you to connect across industries and across sectors. So the data collection is a really important part of this work. It allows us to see how our residents are faring as well and see how things are going. There's a lot of new hardware and software that's being created right now to support some of this work. You know, one of the things we realized it seemed very data heavy at the beginning, and then we realized with work like this, you can't just sort of walk outside and say, gee, the climate's better. You know, you're gonna have to count what you do and hope that everybody else you're working with is also counting so you can start to see some of the impacts. So here are our goals. We center the residents and prioritize what's good for our residents in the center of the whole effort. So we want to ensure participants share in the full and tangible benefits of a greener Atlanta housing. All right, my team is telling me to back up. Good Lord, okay. Thank you very much. And then to operate most efficiently. So one of the things that housing authorities do is provide utility allowances to its residents. And so to the extent that we lower those costs means we can do more with the resources that we're given. And we can do more for the residents. And then to create a more just, equitable future. Sustainability and resilience heals our communities, and now and going forward. And we want to ensure that we are still around to help our residents and improve the quality of life in Atlanta. So our partners are really a broad range of organizations. These are nonprofits and for-profits, consultants, and Georgia Power, South Face, Solar Energy Loan Fund. Obviously, City of Atlanta is a big partner with us. Thank you, John. And you know, they have the sticks and the carrots. And we've discovered that when you find organizations with the same level of energy and commitment, it makes the job a lot easier and a lot more fun. But this is some of the most exciting part, is when we get to talk on the phone with our new partners and accomplish common goals. And if you don't see your organization on here yet, we'll be reaching out to you soon. So thank you very much. And we'll talk a little bit very quickly about some of the partnerships we've accomplished. So our progress to date. We launched an energy efficiency rent boost with South Face. So if landlords, one of the things we heard from our landlords is that there's a thing called a split incentive, which is they pay for all the improvements, but the tenants reap the benefit of that. So we realized we needed to reduce the cost and provide some incentives to get the landlords. We wanted to tackle the energy burden first, and we discovered as part of that process that of the 25,000 or so vouchers that we have outstanding at any time, about 4,000 of our residents actually rent in single-family homes, which is the biggest source of the energy, one of the reasons why Atlanta has such a high energy burden. So we wanted to address that first. So we brainstormed some solutions. We reached out to our partners to develop this process. So if landlords install certain types of improvements, we'll give them more on their rent. And if they need to borrow, we created a $1 million loan fund with the Solar Energy Loan Fund to provide low-cost capital to our landlords. And so we tried to work it out so that the energy boost will repay that debt. So the amount of money that they get for the increase in rent will help offset that. We created a partnership with Lowe's. So Lowe's gives all of our landlords a little fob that gives them discounts on their goods and services, and we've also been promoting Georgia Power's rebates. So we're really hoping that at the end of the day, this actually is not costing the landlords. And it ends up helping their balance sheets. They end up with more valuable property and a more competitive unit. And one of the other things we learned is that one of the highest causes of turnover is utility expenses. It's not that they can't afford the rent, it's that they can't afford the utilities. We launched and that was part of the Buyers Club. We tackled the challenge. It was a big challenge of recycling at multifamily properties because of the way the system, the way that the city captures recycling. A lot of multifamily properties miss out. A lot of residents in multifamily properties miss out. So we joined up with the National Recycling Partnership. We did a pilot with that, and we included our 11 properties in that. And as a part of that, for 8 weeks, we diverted 7 tons of waste from a landfill and saved 20 tons of greenhouse gases. So this is an example of the data collecting that happens in these things. And then operationally, we updated our procurement policies to encourage vendors to buy green, and we have begun incorporating sustainability principles in our contracts and development RFPs, requests for proposals, for our sites. On the property side, we're happy to say that we are fully compliant with the city's commercial building energy ordinances. They'll talk about those later, you can look those up. But they're very powerful tools for us, and it allows us to connect with other buildings and other properties on this initiative. We've estimated that we have about 1,500 units in our portfolio are green certified, and we're still counting. We have reduced as part of our data collecting efforts, we determined that we were able to reduce our energy consumption by 15%, and we're on track to reduce by 20% by 2023. And that is part of our membership with the Better Buildings Challenge, which is a Department of Energy initiative. And with all that data gathering, we benchmarked all of our AH properties in that portfolio manager, which is a fantastic tool for tracking your properties. And through all this data collecting, we established our carbon footprint. And carbon footprint, it was a very complicated exercise, I think, but it opened up a whole lot of opportunities for us, which we'll talk about in a minute. Once you've declared and determined what your carbon footprint is, you're really in the game. So that was very exciting. It allows us to, and then with our Energy Star portfolio manager, we determined that all but 2 of our properties meet or exceed per property Energy Star ratings, which gave us the information to start addressing those 2 properties. And then we're going to achieve LEED Gold status on our self-developed Roosevelt Hall, which is that community center near the AU campus. And it's beautiful and has all kinds of new techniques in it. And we're super proud of that property. So some of the activities that we have going on, we're going to use that carbon footprint and the data that we've collected from the Better Buildings Challenge. We're working with a team that's helping us explore the sale of carbon credits and tax credits. We're a nonprofit organization, so we don't pay taxes, so we can sell. We've learned that we can sell those savings in the carbon market. And then we want to use that revenue to start reinvesting in some of the efficiencies that we want to install going forward. We're in the process of launching a sustainability plan with a path towards zero emissions by 2035, and I've got a slide to show how an organization does that. We're exploring ways of prioritizing solar on our multifamily properties as the costs come down and incentives are created and more technology the technology continues to improve. Those workforce training programs we're realizing is going to be a huge part of improving the lives of the residents, but also building the sector out. And so we're hoping that some of these guys and gals will create their own businesses, will pick up the tools and techniques that the industry is really seeking for all the demand for these particular improvements. We have a goal that 1/3 of all of our units will be certified green by 2027. A lot of that's being driven by our investors. So our investors are requiring that units be green, and so we're hoping that we've projected, based on our development strategies, that a good portion of these units will be green by virtue of that. But also, so it makes it easier for us to gather that priority and put it into our development proposals. And then we're looking at the potential of becoming a certified green business. So there's several different ways you can get those certifications. It takes a while, but we feel like that will open up non-traditional ways of accessing resources and new partnerships for organizations that want to support low-income communities where they live. So we worked with our consultants to create a path to net zero. So we took as our guiding star, in 2011, the City of Atlanta set a goal for itself of achieving net zero emissions on city-owned assets by 2035. And so we said, what if we did that? And we have an amazing consulting team that worked with us and took all of our data and presented this to us as ways that we might achieve that goal. So greater efficiencies and potentially leveraging our smaller lots, we might be able to achieve that goal. Very quickly, we've got 5 program areas: resident services, landlord services, real estate development, real estate operations, and AH operations. And that's really going across the whole organization. All right, I'm going to breeze through some of the goals that we're looking at. This is resident services. So lowering those utility burdens, job readiness is very exciting. Landlord services, this is, we have 2,700 small landlords that we work with, and working closely with them and helping to improve their bottom lines. We hope that the landlords have been some of our most important collaborators in this work. The area that tends to get the most attention is real estate development. There's a lot of innovation in multifamily construction and multifamily development we're very excited about. So we're trying to talk to our partners to find out how they can help bring some innovation and know that they're going to get full support and competitive opportunities from Atlanta Housing. Real estate operations is really how we operate our large scale operators. So Columbia, Mercy Housing, Integral, other partners, Michaels that we work with on some of our larger sites. How can they help us help them to improve efficiencies on their particular properties and improve their bottom lines? And then lastly, our own operations. Hey. So take our own passion. This is a staff-led initiative. And so we looked at our own departments up and down the organization. So from processing contracts electronically, buying green supplies, increasing our own recycling and electronic equipment, and expanding employee awareness from urban gardens to activities for our kids. And now I'm going backwards. So I love this quote from the mayor. I think he put it best, is that you bring your whole self to this work. He said, climate matters in my administration. I'm an engineer. I get the science of it. I'm a community member. I get the community impacts of it. I'm a 34-year-old mayor, so I get the necessity of it and the challenges of it. So we look forward to this journey, and we look forward to seeing you there and joining us. And then I just want to say thanks on behalf of the team, of our entire team. One more picture, but so it's truly a group effort, including Priya, Spencer, John, Susan, Jeff, and Shannon, Morgan, LaKanya, Ryan, and both Kens, and our leadership in Paul Vranikar and Trish O'Connell. Thank you very much for your support. Thank you for your interest, and thank you for your advice. All right. And we look forward to seeing you along the way. I don't know if there's any questions, but you can follow up with us later. We've got several members of our team here, and thank you for reaching out for those folks that already have. And good luck.